Hi, I'm Eric J. Barkman, and welcome to the third episode of Time Out, my vlog about time travel and fiction. Yes, this series does still exist, even though the first episode was last October, the second episode was in December, and now we're finally getting to the third episode in August. We're in August, right? We're still in August. We're still in August. There are various things that caused the delay, including the fact that I started streaming and other stuff. But we're back now. And in this episode, we're covering one of my favorite book series of all time, Animorphs. Note, we're covering the book series Animorphs, not the TV series. I don't even know if the TV series included time travel. If it did, we might cover that in a future episode, but that would require me to actually go back and watch the TV series, so probably not. As per usual, this episode will include a bunch of spoilers for Animorphs, so if you haven't read the book series but want to, and don't want it spoiled, you probably shouldn't watch this. And if you haven't read it, I'm not sure how much this will actually make sense, because I will be assuming that anybody watching this has read and is familiar with the book series. So the first possible example of time travel is in book 7, where the Elemist, a higher level being, brings them to a future where the Yeerks have taken over and Rachel is a controller. Now, the weird thing is that this future Rachel controller was expecting the Animorphs to be made up of 6 humans, not 5 humans and an Andalite, which means this can't be the future of the Animorphs timeline, which brings up the question, is it like the future of an alternate timeline? Is it... or is it not even a future? Is it just like an illusion? This is why I say possible example of time travel, which means we don't actually learn anything about how time travel works from this. So we'll move on to book 11. In the first chunk of the book, Jake keeps having these hallucinations that he's in the Amazon, and the Animorphs are running into all sorts of problems down there. Then partway through, they steal a bug fighter, get into a fight with the blade ship where both ships fire once, the beams hit, and this causes a Sario rip, which is basically a hole in time. Ships fall through, go back in time a day, where they crash land in, you guessed it, the Amazon. And while here, Jake occasionally has flashes to his first time through the day back home. Now, the weird thing is, the chapters all have like times of when everything happens for both sections, but the times of the flashes don't line up with the times that he has them, and don't even necessarily go in the same order. Not to mention, the flashes don't make much sense to begin with. Axe also figures that at the time, when they reach the point where the Sario rip was caused, it'll close, and both versions of the Animorphs at home and in the Amazon will cease to exist, because there can't be 2 versions of them occupying the same time. And it's only happening temporarily because of the Sario rip still being open. That seems a bit weird to me, but at worst it can be chalked up to Axe just being wrong. A lot is made of the fact that he wasn't paying much attention at school the day that they learned about Sario rips. Eventually, Cassie asks the question, why is Jake the only one having the visions? Axe theorizes that Jake will somehow make it out of the timeline, out of this timeline, and change it so that it didn't happen. And that's what happens. Jake dies and snaps back to his original body from right before they left, where he just decides not to go on the mission. Wait, time out. That doesn't make any sense at all. How would the timelines know he's going to be changing them before he, like, yes, it's time travel involved, but there's still like the sequence of timelines. So what? Huh? And unfortunately, like, sorry Rip stuff is confirmed by Axe at the end after Jake asks him about it, so it's not just like those hallucinations or whatever. Like, Jake learns stuff that actually, and which also does come up later on, as you'll see. The only way I can figure it is that the Elimist did it. Yeah, I'm invoking a wizard did it, just the Elimist. He was the one causing Jake to have the visions. He caused Jake to snap back. It's part of some deal with Kryak regarding their big game thing. That is the only way I can justify it as making any sense. But Eric, you say, it made sense to Axe. Yes, you're correct. It made sense to the guy who wasn't paying attention when they learned about it in school. So, moving on. Book 13. Lemus gives Tobias his morphin power back. Sends him back in time to a day before they became Animorphs, so he can acquire his human self and be able to become his human self at will. This doesn't really cause any complications. It doesn't really, it just, okay, send him back, did that, brought him back. Easy peasy, whatever. So next up, the Andalite Chronicles, which introduces the Time Matrix, a device created by the Elimist that allows the person to go anywhere in time and space. It also can do like weird reality warping stuff, because when like Elfangor, Visor, I don't know, the future Visor 3, whatever he was called back then, I don't remember his rank it was then, and then Lauren, when they all touched it once and each imagined their own home planet, they created this weird like mini universe where there was a mix of all three, and there's a time vortex in the middle where the time matrix appeared that they had to go through to get to it, and they aged as they approached. It was weird. That's not important though, I don't think. The important thing is that even though they didn't travel through time with it exactly, maybe actually, because when they aged from the time vortex, they couldn't just undo that, so they made it so that nobody noticed that Lauren was older than she should have been when they went to Earth. So maybe they just like used time travel for that. It's not really made clear. Either way though, just the act of using it changed the timeline, as eventually the Elimist came to Elfangor on Earth and talked to him about how this isn't where you're supposed to be at this time and all this, and he made things right by putting him back to where he was supposed to be. But the time he spent on Earth was still there. Like, Elfangor still remembered it. Other Andalites knew he was gone for that period of time, but the fact that he came back at a crucial point helped him get promotion and stuff. Future Visor 3 still knew about that stuff. Lauren didn't remember it, but during Elfangor's time on Earth, they had got married, and when he had left, she had been pregnant with his child, and that still happened, as that child was Tobias, which brings up a lot of interesting questions. But what it also tells us is that anything involving time travel alters the timeline, creates a new timeline, changes things. The timeline is not set in stone, which is fascinating, and brings us up to Megamorphs number 2, where an explosion from a nuclear sub causes a Sario rip, sending the Animorphs back in time to the time of dinosaurs, Cretaceous to be specific, near the end. We'll get to that yet. So anyway, they steal a nuke from some aliens, the Nesk, in order to return home, but the Nesk don't take it well and redirect an asteroid to hit the Earth, and another alien race, the Mercora, who are living on Earth as well, they request that the Animorphs use the nuke to, destroy the asteroid. Ow. And save them. So the Animorphs agree, except Tobias, realizing, wait a second, has Axe make the nuke a dud in order to protect the timeline. Wait, timeout. Everything we have seen so far indicates that the timeline is changeable. Except the weird thing here is that the Nesk only redirected that asteroid because of the actions of the Animorphs, right? So the asteroid, which brought up the extinction of the dinosaurs, like I said, we're getting to the end. Happened because of the Animorphs' intervention, right? Not necessarily. It's highly possible that the Nesk were going to be doing this anyway for some other reason, because just they didn't like the Mercora. So now moving on to Megamorphs number 3. It starts off in an alternate timeline where all sorts of things are weird. Like Melissa is an Animorph instead of Rachel. Jake's a megalomaniac, and Cassie owns a slave. Yeah. The Drode quickly shows up and returns everyone's memories and puts Rachel back and takes out Melissa. And it's basically explained that Ayurk, the former Visor 4, got a hold of the Time Matrix and has been going back in time and altering it to make it easier to conquer Earth. Neither the Kryak nor the Ellimist are a fan of this, so they basically have made a deal where the Animorphs will be sent back to where Visor 4 first went to, and then every time he jumps, they'll jump after him. So they chase him through multiple time periods, with the timeline getting more and more messed up as they go, until eventually they capture him. They then use the Time Matrix in order to prevent him from ever getting it by going back in time and preventing his host's parents from ever meeting, which meant he had a different host, which just changed the chain of events. But clearly not so much that it made any major changes otherwise. This is interesting. We're going to get to that in a little bit, though. But I will say this. It was Cassie's plan for how to fix things. She was also the first one to notice that something weird was going on time-wise in Book 7 and 11. The Animorphs still all remember the events of Megamorphs number 3, but no one else does. And then we move on to Megamorphs number 4. Another thing with the Drode showing up. And this time he offers Jake a deal that'll be as if they never went through, the Animorphs never went through that construction site and never became Animorphs. And in a moment of weakness, Jake accepts. And the timeline is thusly altered. This in itself isn't particularly, new. We know, Lemus and Kryak can alter timelines and such. But what follows is fascinating. Throughout the book, various characters, especially Cassie, but to a certain extent all of them, have this feeling that things are off and have weird stuff happening, like Jake sees a hallucination of, his hand being a tiger's paw. Visor 1 suddenly appears in a crowd of people near Rachel and Marco, and all sorts of things like that. Eventually, it turns out that Cassie is subtemporally grounded and is causing the timeline to try to revert to the way it's supposed to be. And the Drode ends this whole experiment because it wasn't going the way he wanted. So, remember what I just said about Cassie? Yeah. Basically, something about the way she's made is she works to, fix the timeline. That's why she noticed things were weird in Book 7, Book 11. That's why she figured out how to fix things in Megamorphs number 3. And in Megamorphs 4, she does. It's really quite fascinating. Move on to final case of time travel Animorphs, the Animalite Chronicles, where there might be time travel. Basically, after the Ellimist became a higher level being, but when Kryak was still not quite so higher level, Kryak was trying to destroy the Earth, and Ellimist saved it by moving it to the opposite side of its orbit. Now, how he did this, we don't know. Did he just, move it around? Or did he actually, cause a time differential between Kryak and the planet, and possibly other stuff? We don't know. So this might be time travel, this might not. I'm just mentioning it for the sake of completeness. So in conclusion, what we've learned is that there are basically three methods of time travel. High-level beings like Lemus and Kryak can just send people through time. The Time Matrix, which was probably made by the Lemus, can also travel through time. And Kryak and Lemus themselves can also just move through time at will and manipulate stuff at will and such. But then, and then of course, Sario rips are accidental phenomena that maybe someday can be controlled, but not at this point. And regardless of the method used, the timeline is alterable, and in fact, every bit of time travel will cause alterations to the timeline. But there are certain individuals who are subtemporally grounded and thus work to return things to the timeline that they were born into. And that's about it for this episode. We'll come back next episode for episode 4, which will be follow-up to episode 1 as a second Arrowverse episode. It'll be dealing with the time travel in The Flash Season 2 and Legends of Tomorrow Season 1. And even Arrow Season 4 had a time travel episode. It was part of the December crossover with Flash, so it was still Flash time traveling. But yeah, so we'll discuss that in the next episode, which will hopefully be before the new season start in October. We'll see how it goes. And don't forget to thumbs the video up if you like it. Thumbs it down if you don't. Subscribing would be great. You can also follow me on Twitter to get my random thoughts. You can support me on Patreon if you want. You can follow me on Tumblr if you want to read my writings. And have fun.